The storm found her before the town did. Mercy Calder rode into Culman Flats with a torn veil tied to her hat, rain freckles on her cheeks, and a quiet fury riding pillion. The sky was the colour of pewter. Lightning stitched the clouds. The wind smelled of wet dust and iron. She looked like a bride that had outrun a church fire, and perhaps she had. She dismounted in front of the livery and touched the mare's neck. "Easy, girl." The animal shivered, then steadied under Mercy's palm. Mercy steadied too. Inside her, a bell kept ringing. Not a church bell, a warning, a vow. She was here to hunt a secret. She was here to finish a story that had started with a kiss and a lie. Culman Flats was a lean place. One street. A few lanterns burning behind warped glass. A saloon with a red door. A sheriff's office with a crooked star nailed over the threshold. Water ran along the gutter and carried orange sand toward the open plains. Somewhere a dog barked once, then thought better of it. Mercy pushed back the veil strap and checked the small pistol at her hip. The weight calmed her. She had learned to trust weight. Words lifted too easy. Promises floated and vanished. Steel kept her honest. She crossed the street, rain ticking on her shoulders, and paused beneath the saloon awning. She could see her reflection in the window. A face both soft and set. Dark hair braided tight. A white ribbon at her throat, stained with dust like a fallen piece of moonlight. She did not look like a widow or a bride or a danger. She looked like all three, depending on the light. Inside, the music was only a memory. A tired piano sat near the stairs. 4 ranch hands hunched over cards. A barkeep, with a scar under his left eye, wiped a glass that would not come clean. In the far corner, a man watched the room the way a hawk watches a field. He had the hard set of a rider who slept near cliffs. His hat brim hid most of his face. His boots were cut for distance, not show. Mercy stepped in. The air smelled of whiskey, wet wool, and rain-cooled smoke. Heads turned, then returned to their small salvations. She felt eyes touch her like the first lick of a match. She did not flinch. The barkeep nodded. "Evening, miss?" "Evening," she said. "Water first, then whiskey." He poured both. She drank the water slow, felt it settle, then let the whiskey warm a thin line down her throat. The warmth did not erase the cold inside. It drew a circle around it. "I am looking for a name," she said, quiet but clear. "A man called Rook Fallon, or a man who once rode with him, or someone who collects the debts he leaves behind." The barkeep's hand paused. The card players went still without trying to. Rain ticked louder for a breath. The hawk-eyed man in the corner lifted his head a fraction. The barkeep shrugged. "Names fly through here like tumbleweeds. Hard to catch one that matters." Mercy set a coin on the counter. Silver flashed. She placed a second beside it. "Some are worth catching," she said. He glanced at the coins, then at her, then at the corner man, as if checking a compass. He leaned in. His voice was smoke low. "Rook Fallon rides the edges. Never steps in the center of a town unless he has to. Folks say he traded his last name twice. Lost the first in a fire. Sold the second in a card room. He hires men through a middle hand. A courier. Grey coat. Limp in the right leg. Name is Silas Ketch." Mercy listened without blinking. The name settled. The bell inside her changed its tone. It sounded like an open door in wind. "Where can I find Silas Ketch?" she asked. Before the barkeep could answer, the corner man spoke. "Try asking quieter, or buy a second glass before you buy a second enemy." Mercy turned toward the voice. He had a face cut by weather and honest work, stubble along a strong jaw, eyes the color of old blue cloth, washed and washed again. He did not look like a judge or a thief. He looked like a man who had been both and found neither to his liking. She lifted her chin. "Thank you for the counsel," she said. "I will consider it." He stood, slow and easy. No threat, just mass and steadiness. He came to the bar, set a coin down, and nodded to the barkeep. "2 coffees, if the pot remembers how." "You buying coffee to quiet a storm?" Mercy asked. "Buying time," he said. The barkeep poured the thick black and left them to it. The stranger rested one elbow on the bar and studied Mercy as if the answer to something lived in the sheen of her eyes. "Name is Gideon Vale," he said. "I run cattle when that pays, and silence when it does not. I have seen Rook's men pass through towns like this. They leave dust and questions, and sometimes a ring on a table where a bride once sat." Mercy's hand slid to the ribbon at her throat. The bell rang again, softer now, like grief that had learned to breathe. "You know about brides," she said. "I know about empty pews," he said. The door opened. Wind and rain and a shape in a grey coat filled the frame. The room drew a breath and held it. The man limped on his right leg. He shook water off his hat and scanned the saloon with a courier's habit, counting exits before faces. "Silas Ketch," Gideon murmured, so only the wood could hear. Mercy did not move. She felt the heat of the coffee near her wrist. She felt Gideon's presence like a fence post at her back, plain and strong. She tasted iron and memory. The night sharpened. Silas took a table with a view of the stairs. He placed a leather satchel at his boot and set 2 fingers on it, as if it were a living thing. The barkeep set a glass down. Silas took 1 sip and grimaced, the way a man does who drinks only when the road makes him. Mercy breathed once, twice. She crossed the room. Every step sounded loud to her and soft to everyone else. She stopped at Silas's table and let the rain drip from her hat brim to the floor. He looked up, bland and quick. "Sir," Mercy said, "I am told you know roads. I have one to walk, and it is tied to a name you carry." "Not sure what you think I carry," he said. "Secrets," she said. "Debts. The sound a lie makes when it breaks." The card players shifted. The piano gave a tired thump, as if remembering a chord. Gideon moved 2 steps closer, then stopped. His restraint steadied the air. Silas smiled without warmth. "That sounds like poetry." "Poetry is a poor meal. Who sent you to my table, miss?" "No one," Mercy said. "I sent myself. Tell me where Rook Fallon rides. Tell me what he traded the first time and the second, and what he plans to trade next." Silas's hand slid a fraction toward the satchel. Mercy did not reach for her pistol. She let silence sit with them. Rain braided down the window in long lines. But then she whispered, so low only he could hear, "I wore white for him once, the color of surrender. It turned to ash. I came to return what is owed." Silas's eyes narrowed. A flicker, then a calculation. He glanced past her shoulder at Gideon. He read the room again. He found no easy door. "You are hunting a ghost," he said. "Ghosts leave tracks in wet dust," Mercy said. He hesitated. That was the turning. Mercy felt it, like a horse catching a new scent. He tapped the satchel with 2 fingers. North cut. Old Stage Road, a line shack near a dry river named Whisper Draw. 3 days if you ride steady. He is there when the moon is thin. He likes the dark to do his talking. "Why tell me?" she asked. "Because someone always follows Rook," he said. "Better it be a storm than a fool. You look like weather." She held his gaze 1 beat longer, then nodded. "Thank you." Gideon stepped up beside her as she turned. He did not touch her. He did not need to. The rain softened outside. The dog barked again, as if the world had decided to move. Mercy finished her coffee. The warmth reached the cold and did not conquer it. It made a home around it. She felt the shape of the road settle inside her bones. If this story has warmed a quiet corner of your heart, stay close. The night still holds more to tell. The wind is shifting, and so are we. Dawn came thin and silver, the kind that slips across the land without asking permission. Mercy Calder rode north, her mare's hooves whispering over the soaked plains. The rain had stopped sometime in the night, leaving the scent of sage and gun oil in the air. A hawk turned slow circles above, and the horizon looked like it had forgotten how to end. She hadn't slept. Not really. She had watched the clouds break apart and listened to Gideon Vale's voice echo in her mind. "You look like weather." The words lingered like an unwanted truth. He rode a few paces behind her now. Not invited, not refused, just there, the way distance sometimes offers comfort when closeness would burn. When the trail curved, she glanced back. Gideon's hat was pulled low, his shoulders steady. He handled his horse like a man who'd spent too long with ghosts for company. "You don't talk much," she said. "Most talk just scares the silence," he answered. Mercy almost smiled. "Then maybe the silence has earned its peace." "Peace is for the ones who quit early," he said. "You don't look like one of them." She didn't answer. The wind lifted a strand of her hair, and somewhere behind that silence she felt something move. Not quite warmth, not yet trust. By midday, they reached the ridge that marked the old stage road. The plains opened wide, ripples of tawny grass, rocks like sleeping cattle, and the slow shimmer of heat building again. Gideon dismounted to check the ground. "Tracks," he murmured. "2 riders. Heavy packs." "Maybe 2 nights old." "Rook's men?" He nodded. "Or someone who wants to look like them. Either way, they're heading toward Whisper Draw." Mercy watched the marks in the dust, prints pressed deep, sharp-edged. She imagined the men who made them, the kind who laughed at danger and prayed only when no one was listening. She whispered, "He doesn't know I'm coming." Gideon rose. "Then you've already got the advantage." They stopped that night near a dry creek bed. The firelight danced low, orange and restless. Mercy sat wrapped in her blanket, her pistol resting beside her knee. Gideon brewed coffee in a blackened tin pot, the smell mixing with smoke and memory. He handed her a cup. "Drink. It won't make you forget, but it'll make remembering hurt less." She took it, fingers brushing his. The touch was brief, but it struck through her like the first warmth after frost. "You talk like a man who's buried his share of stories," she said. He looked into the fire. Maybe, but I've learned they don't stay buried if the heart keeps digging. The flames cracked. Somewhere out in the dark, a coyote called, low and lonely. Mercy stared into the fire and saw another night years ago, a wedding dress, a promise, a man with Rook's voice whispering lies that sounded like forever. "I wore white," she said softly. "He said it made me look like hope." Gideon's gaze lifted to her face. "And now?" "Now it looks like a warning." He didn't answer. He didn't have to. The quiet between them spoke better than any words could. Near midnight, the wind changed. The horses stamped and snorted, uneasy. Gideon was on his feet before the fire dimmed. He scanned the dark ridge above them. "Riders," he said. "2, maybe 3, coming fast." Mercy stood, heart quick but steady. She reached for her gun, the metal cool in her hand. The first shot cracked across the night. A muzzle flash flared on the ridge, then another. Bullets bit into the dirt near their fire. Gideon pushed her down behind a rock. "Stay low," he hissed. "I didn't ride this far to hide," she shot back. He gave her a look that was half warning, half respect. "Then make your shots count." They returned fire. The echoes rolled across the plains like thunder trapped between cliffs. Dust rose, the air thick with gunpowder and adrenaline. Mercy aimed once, twice, and saw one rider tumble from his saddle, a dark shape rolling into the brush. The rest fled, vanishing into the night as quick as they came. Silence fell hard. Gideon checked the ridge, then the fallen man. He dragged the body into the firelight. The man was young, no older than 20. A grey scarf around his neck, the same colour as Silas Ketch's coat. Mercy's eyes hardened. "Rook sent him." Gideon shook his head. "No, this one's too green. More likely sent to delay you, or to scare you back." Mercy knelt beside the body, her voice quiet. "Then he doesn't know me at all." The wind carried the smell of spent gunfire and sage. The fire snapped, small sparks leaping into the dark. Gideon watched her, the way grief shaped itself into resolve. There was a danger in her stillness, the kind that comes when pain learns how to aim. He said, "You'll find him, but when you do, don't lose yourself trying to win." Mercy looked at him, eyes soft and sharp all at once. Maybe that's the only way to find what's left. The night breathed again, slow and heavy. Gideon added wood to the fire. She poured the last of the coffee, the steam curling like ghosts above the flame. For a long while they said nothing. Only the crackle of fire, only the whisper of wind through dry grass. Finally, Gideon spoke, voice low. "Whisper Draw's a hard place. Men disappear there. Even their shadows forget their names." Mercy sipped the last drop and set the cup down. "Then I'll remind it who I am." He nodded once. "At first light, we ride." She looked toward the horizon, where the sky was beginning to pale, the color of new steel, the promise of reckoning. "If this story has found its way beneath your skin," she said softly, almost to herself, "stay close. The next road runs deeper, and the plains remember everything." And as the wind shifted east, Mercy Calder pulled her coat tighter and stared into the fire, where every spark looked like a memory trying to live again. The morning came slow, drawn across the plains like a wound healing wrong. Mercy Calder saddled her mare in silence. The world around her was washed clean, but her heart wasn't. Gideon Vale packed the camp with the steady calm of a man who had buried too many dawns and still rose for the next one. The fire had died, but its smoke clung to them, the scent of what survived the night. "You could still turn back," Gideon said quietly, tightening his reins. Mercy glanced at him, the faintest trace of a smile. "And miss what I came for?" He met her eyes, steady and unflinching. "Sometimes what we come for ain't what we need." She looked north. The horizon was a silver scar, endless and promising nothing. "I've learned to take what I can get." They rode. By mid-morning, the plains began to change. Softer hills, patches of pale grass, and the far whisper of water. Whisper Draw wasn't on any map, but men spoke its name the way they spoke sins. Quiet, reluctant, half-believing. The land itself seemed to hold its breath. A buzzard wheeled overhead, slow and patient. Mercy's mare flicked its ears, uneasy. "There," Gideon said, pointing toward a break in the ridge. A thin stream of smoke drifted into the sky. A shack, old and leaning, its roof sagged like an old man's back. Mercy nodded once. "Rook's shadow." They dismounted at the edge of the dry riverbed. The shack sat in the distance, half hidden by brush and rock. Gideon crouched, eyes narrowing. 2 horses tied behind. "Someone's home." Mercy's hand brushed the grip of her pistol. "Then let's knock." They crossed the draw slow. Dust lifted in quiet puffs around their boots. The wind whispered through brittle weeds, and the boards of the shack creaked like an old prayer losing faith. Gideon motioned her to stay behind as he approached the door, but Mercy shook her head. "This was my trail before it was yours," she said. He gave a short nod. "Then walk it beside me." She stepped forward, pushed the door open. The hinges groaned. A tired sound. Inside, shadows waited like memories that had learned patience. A man sat at a small table, a tin cup in hand, his face lost under the brim of his hat. He didn't look surprised. "I wondered which ghost would find me first," he said. Mercy's breath caught. She knew that voice, not Rook Fallon's, but close, too close. "Silas Ketch," she said. He looked up, pale eyes slick with recognition. The limp had worsened. "Miss Calder." "Didn't think you'd make it this far." "You told me where to find Rook," she said. "I came to find out why." Silas laughed once, dry, short. "Because I owe him more than he'll ever owe me, and maybe I was tired of the owing." Gideon stepped in, hand near his gun. "You rode for him long enough to know where he hides." Silas shook his head. "No one hides from Rook. He just disappears until someone bleeds enough to make him curious again." Mercy's eyes hardened. "Then he'll be curious soon." The courier leaned back, studying her. "You still wear the ring?" She froze. Her left hand twitched, the faint mark still visible where gold once rested. "Not any more," she said. "He took it when he left, along with the man I thought he was." Silas's face softened, just for a heartbeat. "He never was that man. He's something made from loss. You can't kill that. Only remind it what it used to feel like." Mercy stepped closer. "Then I'll remind him." The air shifted. Gideon caught it first. The creak of leather, a boot behind the shack. He moved fast, yanking Mercy down just as a bullet tore through the wall where her head had been. Silas cursed, reaching for his gun. "He's here!" Another shot cracked, shattering the table. Gideon returned fire through the window. The room filled with smoke and dust, the sharp smell of gunpowder thick enough to choke on. Outside, hooves thundered, 2 riders circling. A voice, cold and familiar, cut through the chaos. "Mercy Calder," it called. "You should have stayed buried with the past." Mercy's blood turned to fire. That voice. She'd heard it at an altar once, whispering forever. Rook Fallon. Gideon fired again, forcing the riders back. "We can't hold here," he said. Mercy's eyes burned. "I'm not running." "You're not," Gideon said, grabbing her arm. "You're moving. Big difference." They burst from the back door just as the front wall splintered under gunfire. The horses spooked but stayed. Gideon threw her into the saddle and swung up beside her. Bullets hissed through the air like angry wasps. "Ride!" he shouted. They tore across the open draw, the shack collapsing behind them in a storm of splinters. Mercy turned once in the saddle and saw a figure standing in the doorway. Black coat, hat brim low, rifle steady. Rook. He didn't chase. He just watched, calm as death, waiting for its cue. Mercy's heart pounded so hard she could hear it over the thunder of hooves. The plains blurred. The air burned cold against her face. Only when they reached a rise miles away did Gideon pull the horses to a stop. Both animals shook, sweat foaming on their flanks. Mercy slid off her mare and stood staring back at the valley, chest heaving. The shack was a dark smear against the land. Smoke rose in slow spirals. "He saw me," she whispered. Gideon dismounted, voice low. "And you saw him." She turned toward him. "I thought I'd forgotten his face." He studied her, careful, steady. Forgetting's a mercy not everyone gets. She looked away, tears she refused to shed burning behind her eyes. "He took everything I was. I came to take it back." The wind pushed through the grass, long and mournful. Gideon laid a hand on her shoulder, firm, grounding. "Then we start by taking his ground," he said. "He'll be waiting at Whisper Draw proper, and this time you won't face him alone." Mercy looked at him, really looked. The set of his jaw, the quiet strength in his eyes. A man shaped by loss, offering steadiness she hadn't dared want. She nodded once. "Then we ride at dusk." He smiled faintly. "Dusk suits revenge, and redemption, if we're lucky." Mercy picked up a handful of dust, let it fall through her fingers. "The plains remember everything," she said. "It's time they remembered me." Gideon tipped his hat. "Then let's give them something worth remembering." The sun bled lower, staining the horizon gold and crimson, the colors of old vows and new reckoning. Mercy stood tall in the wind, the ghost of her veil fluttering from her saddle horn. "If this story has settled somewhere deep inside you," she said softly, "keep close. The night ahead carries truth, and the plains will echo what we're about to awaken." The sun bled out slow across the plains. Gold turned to rust. Rust turned to shadow. Mercy Calder and Gideon Vale rode beneath it, two dark figures drawn toward the edge of the world. Behind them, the trail shimmered faintly in the dying light, the ghost of everywhere they'd already burned. Whispered Draw waited ahead, carved into the land like an old scar. They could see it now, a narrow ravine winding between red stone cliffs, bones of cattle and men long dead, buried in the sand. The air itself seemed thinner, quieter, as if the earth didn't want to remember what it had seen here. "Looks peaceful," Gideon said. Mercy's voice was calm, but the edges were sharp. "Peace is the mask revenge wears before it kills you." He gave a low chuckle. "You speak like someone who's read the book twice." "I wrote the last page," she said. They made camp near a dry cottonwood, its trunk split down the middle by lightning. The remains of an old campfire lay nearby, stones blackened and scattered, ash long cold. Someone had been here not long ago. Gideon crouched, touching the soot. Still smells of whiskey and gun oil. Rook's men. Mercy knelt beside him, running her fingers through the ash. A small fragment of metal glinted in the dirt. A gold clasp, the kind that fastened the back of a woman's dress. She stared at it for a long time. "He was here," she said softly. And he wasn't alone. Gideon studied her face, the way pain and resolve shared space behind her eyes. "You sure you're ready to face him?" "I've been ready since he left me with a vow and a grave." He didn't argue. He didn't need to. The fire between them wasn't anger anymore. It was something quieter, heavier, the kind of heat that builds from what's been waiting too long. The night settled in deep. Coyotes cried far off. The sky spilled stars across the dark like broken glass. Mercy sat close to the fire, her hat off, the light painting gold in her hair. Gideon cleaned his rifle, quiet, deliberate. After a long silence, she asked, "Why are you still here, Gideon? You don't owe me anything." He looked up. "Maybe I do. Maybe we all owe something to someone who never got their justice." She tilted her head, eyes narrowing slightly. "This about me, or about your own ghosts?" He smiled, not with humor, but with recognition. "Does it matter? We're both chasing something that don't sleep." Mercy watched the flames, the way they shifted with the wind. "You ever lost someone to betrayal?" Gideon hesitated. "A brother. Same blood, different choices. I walked away before the bullets did. Doesn't mean they didn't hit." Her voice softened. "And you still carry it?" "Every mile," he said. "But carrying ain't the same as stopping." Their eyes met across the fire. The air between them thickened, not with danger, but with understanding, the kind that feels too close, too human. Mercy broke the gaze first. "If I don't make it tomorrow—" "You will," he said. "If I don't," she continued, "there's a letter in my saddlebag. It's for the sheriff in Marlow. Make sure he gets it." He frowned. "What's in it?" "The truth," she said, "and what I want done with what's left." He leaned forward, voice low. "You talk like someone planning a good death." She met his eyes. "I'm planning an honest one." A faint sound broke the moment. A horse's snort in the distance, followed by the creak of a saddle. Gideon rose instantly, hand to his revolver. Mercy followed, scanning the shadows. "How many?" "2, maybe 3, keeping low." He motioned toward the rocks above their camp. "Take the high side. If they mean harm, we'll flank them." She moved fast, climbing the ridge in silence. The moonlight silvered her hair, her outline sharp against the dark. Gideon took position near the fire, his rifle ready but hidden. A shape emerged from the dark. A lone rider leading 2 horses. He stopped short of the fire, raised one hand. "Don't shoot!" the man called. His voice cracked, thin with dust and fear. "Name's Jesse Quinn. I rode courier for Rook Fallon once, before he turned." Gideon kept his aim steady. "You're either brave or stupid coming here." "Maybe both," Jesse said. "But I got something she'll want." Mercy stepped down from the ridge, gun drawn. "Then say it quick." Jesse swallowed hard. "Rook's waiting at the canyon's mouth. Says he wants to finish what started years ago. Told me to bring word if you were coming." She frowned. "And you came why?" "Because I seen what he does to the ones who love him. I ain't built for that kind of hell." Gideon studied the man. Clothes torn, eyes hollow. A survivor, not a liar. "Go," Mercy said. "Ride west and don't look back." He nodded, turned, and was gone before the fire crackled again. The silence that followed was heavy. Mercy holstered her pistol. "He's waiting for me." Gideon's jaw tightened. Then he knows the game's almost over. She looked toward the canyon. The moon hung low, caught between cliffs like a coin balanced on an edge. "I've walked too long to stop at the gate," she said. He stepped closer, his voice a rough whisper. "You don't have to walk it alone." For a heartbeat she didn't breathe. Then, softly, "Then don't let me." Gideon's hand brushed hers. A spark passed, not the kind that burns, but the kind that steadies. They stood like that for a moment, 2 souls carved by different storms, finding the same horizon. When the fire burned down to embers, Mercy spoke again, barely above a whisper. "If this story has found a home somewhere inside you, stay close. The night's not done, and tomorrow the plains will echo with a reckoning long overdue." Dawn rose slow and pale over Whisper Draw, bleeding through the canyon like light trying to remember itself. Mercy Calder stood at the edge of the ravine, the wind lifting strands of her hair as if the land itself were warning her back. Behind her, Gideon Vale saddled the horses, his movements quiet and practiced. The air smelled of iron, dust, and something waiting. The canyon looked dead, all bone and silence, but Mercy could feel life breathing under it. Or maybe it was vengeance pretending to be alive. "You could still ride away," Gideon said softly. Mercy's eyes stayed on the path below. "And let him keep the ending?" He didn't argue. "Then let's make sure it's the right one." She turned toward him, meeting his gaze. There was no fear there, only something older. Resolve, maybe. Or grace wearing a harder face. "Whatever happens down there," she said, "don't stop me." He nodded once. "I'll ride with you until the last truth stands." They rode into Whisper Draw. The sun hadn't yet cleared the canyon walls, and the light came in thin silver strips, cutting through the dust. The air held a strange hush, the kind that comes before confession. Half a mile in, they found the remnants of a camp, ashes still warm, boot prints leading deeper. A single playing card fluttered in the wind. The Queen of Hearts, torn down the middle. Mercy dismounted, stared at it for a long moment. "He always liked to leave a message," she murmured. Gideon watched her. That means something to you? She smiled faintly. Once he said I was his luck. Guess he finally played the hand out. She tucked the torn card into her pocket and kept walking. The canyon widened near the end, opening into a flat basin of red earth and silence. A single man stood there beside the skeleton of an old stagecoach, hat low, coat black as drought rain, Rook Fallon. Even from a distance she recognized the way he held himself, too easy, too sure, the way his shadow stretched long, as if the sun itself bent to his will. "Mercy!" he called, his voice echoing off the canyon walls, smooth as whiskey poured over lies. "You made good time." She stopped 10 paces from him. "You left a trail easy enough to follow?" Rook smiled, slow and cruel. "Always did like when you came looking for me." Gideon shifted beside her, hand near his gun. "You talk too much for a man who ought to be praying." Rook's eyes flicked to him. "And you must be the new ghost. Every woman chasing revenge picks one up along the way. How's it feel, stranger, to die for a cause that ain't yours?" Gideon didn't move. "Haven't died yet." Rook chuckled. "Optimist. I like that." Mercy stepped forward. "You took my life once, my name, my peace. Now I'm here to take something back." He tilted his head. "Your life again?" "My truth," she said. Rook's hand drifted to his holster. "Truth's a poor trade for blood." Mercy's voice stayed steady. "Then I'll bleed honest." The wind kicked up, swirling dust between them. For a breath, no one moved. Then the world snapped. 2 shots, 1 heartbeat apart. Dust exploded near Mercy's boot. Rook ducked behind the stagecoach, reloading fast. Gideon dropped to a knee, returning fire. The canyon thundered with echoes, sound folding over sound until it felt like the earth itself was shooting back. Mercy moved sideways, quick and silent, circling the wreck. Rook's voice carried over the smoke. "You think this ends with me dead, Mercy? You think that makes you clean?" She fired once. The bullet grazed the coach, splintering wood inches from his face. "No," she said. "It just makes you gone." He laughed, that same low laugh that had once made her believe, "You can't kill what you built yourself." Her next shot took his hat clean off. The sound died. Rook stepped into the open, blood streaking his arm where Gideon's bullet had grazed him. His gun was still steady. "You were the best thing I ever ruined," he said. Mercy's eyes shimmered. Not tears, not quite. "Then you ruined the wrong woman." Their guns fired almost together. Rook staggered, dropped his weapon, then fell to one knee. Blood spread dark across his shirt. The silence that followed felt too big for the canyon. Mercy stood frozen. Gideon's hand was already on her shoulder, steadying her, keeping her from falling. Rook looked up at her, eyes dimming but sharp. "You always did shoot straighter when your heart was breaking." She stepped closer, holstering her gun. "And you always talked better when you were dying." He smiled, small, sad, almost human. "Guess we both got what we came for." He fell back, the dust swallowing him. The sound of the wind returned, slow and endless. Mercy stood over him for a long time. The man who had stolen her vows, her peace, her name, finally still. Gideon waited behind her, saying nothing. She whispered, "He's gone." Gideon's voice was soft. "Then so is the part of you he owned." She nodded, but her hands trembled. "I thought it'd feel lighter." Sometimes freedom's just a new kind of weight, he said. She knelt, picked up Rook's hat, and set it on the dirt beside him. No gravestone, she said. Just dust. Then she turned away. By the time they reached the canyon rim, the sun was high, washing the world in a strange, forgiving light. Mercy stopped, looking back once more. "Endings don't come easy out here," Gideon said quietly. "No," she said, "but they come honest." He watched her, the wind lifting the torn veil from her saddle. "What will you do now?" She looked toward the horizon, where the land rolled endless and waiting. "Maybe remember how to live without him." He smiled faintly. "That's the hardest road." "I've been riding hard my whole life," she said. "Might as well keep going." The silence between them wasn't empty anymore. It was full of breath, of memory, of something that might one day grow into peace. Mercy mounted her horse, turned toward the long road west. Gideon swung into his saddle beside her. "If this story has touched a place, you keep quiet," she said softly, the wind carrying her words. "Stay close." The plains still have more to teach, about loss, about love, and about how even revenge can learn to forgive. Evening slid down the plains like smoke from a dying fire. Mercy Calder rode beside Gideon Vale, her dress torn, her hands still shaking from the morning storm. Behind them, Whisper Draw lay quiet, a graveyard for secrets, for love turned wrong, for the kind of vengeance that doesn't end when the gun goes silent. The sun dipped low, turning the sky to copper and blood. Every color looked honest in that light. Mercy hadn't spoken since Rook's body fell. Her voice lived somewhere between her ribs and the horizon, caught and waiting. Gideon rode steady beside her. He didn't ask, he didn't press. He just stayed, like the steady rhythm of a heartbeat that refused to leave her alone in the wind. Finally she said, "It's over." Gideon looked at her. "Is it?" She let out a breath that sounded almost like a laugh. "I thought killing him would feel like closing a door. And it feels more like standing in the same room, just with the lights out." He nodded, slow. "Doors don't close easy out here. Not when they're built from love and lies." She turned toward him. "You ever forgive someone who didn't deserve it?" "Only once," he said. "And?" He smiled faintly, still trying to decide if it was mercy or weakness. Mercy's gaze dropped to her reins. "Maybe both." They made camp near a small creek, the water barely moving, the sound soft as breathing. The firelight danced across their faces, hers pale and tired, his carved by shadow. Gideon poured her coffee, thick and bitter. She sipped slow. The warmth steadied her hands, but didn't reach the cold behind her ribs. "You should rest," he said. "I can't." "Why not?" "Because I don't know what to do with quiet," she whispered. "I've lived too long chasing noise." He stirred the fire, the sparks floating like lost prayers. "Then maybe tonight you just listen." The plains are full of voices that don't need names. She watched him, really watched him. The scar along his jaw, the calm in his eyes that came from surviving too much. "You ever wonder what it's like to belong somewhere?" He smiled, just a ghost of it. "Used to. Then I realized some of us are the places others belong to." Her eyes softened. You talk like a man who knows how to heal. He looked at her through the flame. No, just how to stay. The wind picked up, threading through the grass like memory. Mercy leaned back, staring up at the stars. The sky looked endless, sharp, clean, almost cruel in its beauty. I used to think love was a promise, she said. Turns out, it's just a risk some of us keep taking. Gideon's voice came low. Maybe that's what makes it holy. She smiled at that, a real one, small and trembling. You ever been in love, Gideon? Once, he said. She died waiting for me to stop running. Mercy turned her head toward him. And did you? He met her gaze. I'm still learning how. Their eyes stayed locked, something quiet passing between them. Not fire, not hunger, but recognition. The kind that warms without burning. Later, when the fire burned low, Mercy pulled Rook's hat from her saddlebag. She turned it over in her hands, thumb tracing the bullet hole near the brim. This belonged to a man who thought he owned the world, she murmured. Turns out the world never noticed. Gideon watched her. What'll you do with it? She tossed it into the fire. The flames caught fast, curling the edges, turning everything to ash. Let it feed the light, she said. He nodded. Maybe that's forgiveness. She shook her head. No. Just letting go. When the last flame died, silence took its place. Not the heavy kind, but the gentle one that comes after a wound finally breathes. Mercy lay back on her blanket, eyes tracing constellations she didn't know the names of. Gideon lay a few feet away, his hat tilted low, watching her instead of the sky. You think we're still the same after what we do? She asked. He thought for a long moment before answering. No, but maybe that's the point. The dust changes us. The fire, too. What matters is what we build from what's left. She smiled faintly. And what's left, Gideon? He looked into the dark, voice soft. 2 riders under a quiet sky. Seems enough for now. The creek murmured, the wind hummed, and for the first time in years, Mercy's heart didn't ache. It simply beat, steady, human. If this story has rested somewhere close to your own heart tonight, she said quietly, her voice melting into the night air, stay with it. The plains aren't done speaking, and neither are we. Morning came gentle this time, no thunder, no storm. Just soft light spilling over the plains, touching everything like a forgiveness that didn't ask for permission. Mercy Calder stirred awake to the sound of Gideon Vale whistling low as he packed the camp. She blinked against the brightness, the scent of coffee drifting through the air. It was the first morning in years that didn't carry the weight of running. You make noise like a man who slept easy, she said. He smiled without looking up. Can't say I did, but pretending's half the battle. She sat up, pulling her coat tighter. Feels strange, doesn't it? Waking up when there's nothing left to hunt. Gideon poured her coffee. Strange is just peace with its boots still on. She took the cup, feeling the warmth seep into her palms. I don't know what to do with peace. Then treat it like a skittish horse, he said. Quiet, patient, don't reach too fast. It'll come to you when it's ready. Mercy smiled at that. It felt new, the kind that didn't hide behind anything. They rode west through open country, where the land rolled wide and gold beneath the morning sun. Birds scattered in bursts of white, and the wind smelled of sage and promise. Mercy could feel her heartbeat sinking with the rhythm of her mare's hooves, steady, sure, alive. Gideon rode close beside her. "Where'll you go now?" She thought about that for a long time. "There's a ranch near Dorrance Ridge. Used to belong to my father. I haven't seen it since before Rook." "You think it's still standing?" "Maybe," she said. "But even if it's gone, I'll build something there. A house, a fence, a life that doesn't run from its own shadow." He nodded. "That's worth riding toward." They rode in silence a while. The sun climbed higher, painting the world in gold. By midday they reached the old telegraph road, a line of leaning poles and broken wire stretching toward nowhere. Mercy slowed her horse, eyes narrowing at the horizon. Smoke, thin, black, rising from the ridge ahead. "Campfire?" Gideon asked. She shook her head. "Too dark for that." "Something's burning." He pulled his rifle free. "Stay behind me." They rode toward it, the smell of char and dust thickening with each step. When they crested the ridge, Mercy's breath caught. The ranch was there, or what was left of it. The house she'd dreamed of returning to stood half-burned, roof caved, walls blackened. The wind moaned through the ruins like grief remembering its name. Mercy dismounted slowly. "No," she whispered. "Not again." She walked through the ashes, her boots sinking into what had once been her home. The old porch rail still clung to one corner, a ghost refusing to fall. She touched it gently, her fingers leaving prints in the soot. "I thought I'd left all the burning behind me," she said. Gideon came beside her. "Looks like the world wasn't done testing your strength." She turned to him, eyes shining with anger and sorrow tangled together. "I don't want to be strong anymore." He nodded. "Good. Strength's just another name for survival." "Maybe it's time you started living." She sank to her knees, staring at the ashes. "I buried everything here once. My father, my heart, my hope. I came back thinking I could dig them up." Gideon knelt beside her. "Maybe you weren't meant to dig. Maybe you were meant to plant." She looked at him through tears. "Plant what?" He smiled gently. "Whatever still grows after fire." They spent the afternoon in silence, clearing what could be saved. A few boards, a rusted lantern, a piece of fence still standing proud against the wind. Mercy found an old tin box under the debris. Inside, a single photograph survived. Her as a girl beside her father, both smiling under a wide western sky. She held it like something holy. "He used to say the plains remember kindness longer than cruelty." Gideon nodded. "Then maybe this land's just waiting for you to remind it." She stared at the picture, the edges curled from heat. "Do you believe that, Gideon?" He met her gaze. "I believe in what I see. And right now, I see a woman who walked through hell and still knows how to look at the sky." She laughed softly through her tears. "You talk like you've practiced this." "I don't practice," he said. "I just tell the truth when it shows up." By dusk, they had built a small fire beside the ruins. Mercy sat wrapped in a blanket, staring into the flame. The light turned her face gold and warm, as if the world had decided to give her back some of what it took. Gideon poured the last of the coffee, then sat across from her. I keep waiting to feel finished, she said. He leaned forward. And? I just feel here. That's the start, he said. The rest comes after. She looked at him, long, quiet, unafraid. You're staying, aren't you? He smiled, eyes reflecting firelight. You think I'd let you face a sunrise alone after all this? She exhaled slowly, the wind carrying her breath into the night. Then maybe this time I'll let someone stay. The stars rose bright above them, scattered like promises that might finally be kept. Mercy leaned back, watching the fire's glow fade into embers. If this story has reached somewhere tender in you, she said softly, voice barely louder than the night, stay near. Tomorrow the dust will settle, and the heart will learn what it means to belong again. The morning came with a hush so pure it almost felt like grace. Mercy Calder rose before the sun, her boots stirring the ash around what once was home. The air smelled faintly of smoke and wildflowers, a strange balance between loss and renewal. Gideon Vale stood by the corral fence, hammering down a plank salvaged from the ruins. His shirt sleeves were rolled, his movements patient, quiet, the way men move when they're fixing more than wood. Mercy watched him for a while before speaking. You work like someone who's been mending broken things a long time. He didn't look up. Guess I just like giving what's left a chance, she smiled faintly. And what if what's left doesn't want saving? He drove another nail, the sound sharp in the morning calm. Then you let it rest. Not everything wants to bloom again, but some things surprise you. Mercy looked toward the horizon, where the first streaks of dawn brushed the sky in pale gold. Maybe I'm one of those things. Maybe, he said, but you've already started. They spent the day rebuilding, not for what had been, but for what could be. Mercy cleared debris, her hands raw and strong again. Gideon repaired the well, coaxing water up from the earth. The horses grazed in the open field, tails flicking lazily, unaware of the ghosts that used to haunt this place. By midday, sweat gleamed on Mercy's brow. She paused, wiping it away, looking at the new fence rising in front of her, uneven, imperfect, but standing. It's ugly, she said. Gideon grinned. So's every beginning. She laughed, a sound that startled the wind. Feels strange to build instead of bury. Good strange, he said. The kind worth keeping. She nodded, looking down at her hands, blistered, dirt-stained, alive. Maybe this is what forgiveness feels like. He paused, hammer mid-air. How's that? Not clean, not easy, just work. He lowered the hammer, eyes soft. That's the truest kind. That evening, when the sky turned the color of whiskey and firelight, they sat by the new fence. Gideon strummed a few notes on an old guitar he'd found in the rubble. The strings half-rusted, the sound tender and cracked. Mercy leaned back against the post. Didn't take you for a man with music in him. He shrugged. You'd be surprised what the desert keeps quiet. The song he played was slow, a tune older than both of them. Something that sounded like open plains and second chances. Mercy listened with her eyes closed, letting it settle where silence used to live. And when he stopped, she said, "That was beautiful." He looked at her. "So are you, when you stop fighting ghosts." Her eyes opened, meeting his. The fire between them wasn't sharp anymore. It was warm, steady, patient. "You think ghosts ever really leave?" she asked. "No," he said. "But they stop shouting once you start listening." The night deepened. Coyotes sang somewhere beyond the ridge, their cries threading through the wind. Mercy reached for her father's old photograph, the one she'd found in the ashes, and set it on a flat rock beside her. "He'd like you," she said softly. "He used to say men who build fences know how to hold things without trapping them." Gideon smiled. "Smart man." "He was. He just didn't know how to stay alive long enough to see what I'd become." Gideon's voice dropped to a whisper. "Then maybe he's seeing it now." Mercy looked at the fire, her face glowing in its light. "You really believe that?" He nodded. "Out here, everything echoes. The wind, the dust, the love we leave behind. Nothing's truly gone." Her throat tightened. "You talk like a preacher," he chuckled. "No, just a man who's seen too much to stop believing in something." The wind shifted, carrying the scent of rain. Mercy stood and walked a few steps away, feeling the weight of the plains around her, endless, quiet, alive. She closed her eyes. The air brushed her skin like a memory that didn't hurt anymore. When she turned back, Gideon was still watching her, his face soft, unreadable. "You planning to keep standing there till dawn?" he asked. She smiled. "Maybe. Or maybe I'm just learning how it feels to belong again." He rose, dusted off his hands, and joined her. They stood shoulder to shoulder, watching the clouds roll in. "I think the land's forgiving you," he said. "Maybe it's forgiving itself," she answered. They stood that way until the first drops of rain began to fall, light, cool, a baptism for the tired earth and the two souls standing on it. Later, as the fire hissed under the rain, Mercy's voice drifted low and slow. "If this story has settled in you like rain after a long drought, stay close. Tomorrow brings new roots, new sky, and maybe, just maybe, the beginning of something that doesn't end." The rain came soft through the night, tapping against the half-built walls of Mercy Calder's home like fingers remembering a song. By morning, the plains smelled alive again, wet sage, fresh soil, promise. The sky had rinsed itself clean, and so, in a way, had she. Gideon Vale was already up, feeding the horses. His coat was damp, his hair darker with rain, his movements slow and steady. Mercy watched him from the doorway, the firelight behind her flickering gold against the new timber frame. "You work like you don't know how to stop," she said. He looked over, smiling faintly. "Stopping's never done me much good." "Maybe that's why you found me," she said. "Maybe that's why I stayed." They shared breakfast in the open air. Coffee gone lukewarm, biscuits burned around the edges. Neither complained. The silence between them wasn't empty anymore. It had texture, warmth, breath. Mercy broke the quiet first. "I had a dream last night." "Good one or bad?" She stared toward the horizon, voice low. "I was standing in the old church again. The one rook burned. But this time the fire didn't chase me out. It just turned to light." Gideon nodded, eyes thoughtful. "Sounds like the kind that means something." "Maybe," she said. "Or maybe it's just the plains trying to tell me I've finally stopped running." He poured her more coffee. Dreams are how the land speaks when it knows you're ready to listen. She met his eyes across the tin cup. Then what do you think it's saying to you? He grinned a little. Probably that I talk too much. She laughed, soft and real, the kind of laugh that had been buried under years of grit and grief. By midday the sky grew dark again, clouds heavy with the weight of another storm. Gideon secured the horses under a lean-to, while Mercy gathered what she could into the cabin. The wind began to rise, low, moaning, alive. When the rain came this time, it came hard. Sheets of it, hammering the roof, flooding the ground. Lightning tore across the horizon, so bright it turned the plains to silver. Mercy stood in the doorway, rain striking her face, her hair whipping free. Gideon came up behind her, hand finding her shoulder. "You'll catch your death," he said. She didn't move. "Feels like the sky's been holding its breath for years. Now it's finally letting go." He looked at her, the way the light caught the curve of her jaw, the fire in her eyes that even storms couldn't drown. "Maybe that's what you're doing too." She turned toward him, voice soft. "And what if I don't know how to stop?" He stepped closer, the rain framing them both, his breath warm despite the cold. "Then I'll teach you." The storm howled around them, but inside the small cabin there was only stillness. That charged, trembling kind that happens when something true finally reaches the surface. Mercy's fingers brushed his hand. Gideon didn't pull away. "I've spent so long chasing ghosts," she whispered. "I don't know what it means to touch something real." "You don't have to know," he said. "Just feel." Her eyes met his, dark and deep as the rain-soaked earth. The air between them changed, quiet and electric. He reached up, brushed a raindrop from her cheek with his thumb. For a long moment, neither spoke. The thunder outside rolled like a heartbeat too large for the sky. Then, slowly, she leaned into him. The kiss was not wild, not desperate. It was something softer, a recognition, an exhale, the sound of two broken pieces finding where they fit. When they finally parted, she pressed her forehead against his chest, breathing him in. Wood smoke, rain, the faint salt of sweat and survival. "You sure this isn't just the storm talking?" she murmured. He smiled against her hair. "Maybe. But I've been listening a long time, and this is the first thing that's ever made sense." Hours passed. The rain eased. The world outside grew quiet again, washed, humbled, reborn. They sat by the dying fire, wrapped in the same blanket, her head resting against his shoulder. Mercy spoke softly, half to herself. "I thought revenge would be the end of my story. Turns out it was just the road leading here." Gideon nodded. "Most roads worth riding are like that. They take everything first, then give back what matters." She looked at him. "And what matters?" He brushed her hand with his. "Whatever stays when the storm's gone." She smiled, a tear catching the firelight. "Then I guess this is what's left." He pulled her closer. "Seems enough to build on." Outside, the wind carried the scent of wet grass and lightning fading into distance. The plains lay quiet, no longer haunted, just breathing. "If this story has settled into you like the calm after a storm," she whispered, her voice a warmth against the dark, "stay close. Tomorrow, the horizon will open again. Not for running, but for returning. The storm passed in the night. By morning, the world was still, the kind of still that only comes after something has survived. Mercy Calder stepped outside the cabin, the hem of her dress brushing against the wet earth. The plains stretched endless and gold beneath a sky so blue it almost hurt to look at. The air was clean, sharp with the scent of rain and juniper. Every sound felt alive, the creak of the barn door, the slow drip of water from the roof, the soft whinny of a horse greeting dawn. Behind her, Gideon Vale emerged, rolling up his sleeves. His hair was damp, his jaw rough with the promise of another day's work. He carried 2 tin mugs and a quiet smile. "You look like a woman who finally slept," he said. She took the coffee from him, wrapping both hands around the warmth. "Maybe I finally did." He studied her, the wind tugging at his coat. "Feels different this morning, doesn't it?" Mercy nodded, like the world stopped holding its breath. They walked down to the fence they'd built together. The boards were crooked in places, but they held. Gideon ran his hand along the top rail, feeling the solidness of it. "You ever think the land forgives us?" Mercy asked. He took a slow breath. "I think it just waits. It knows we'll come back around when we're ready to make peace." She looked across the wide expanse where sunlight shimmered off the wet grass. Maybe forgiveness isn't about forgetting what burned. Maybe it's about planting something in the ashes and letting it grow anyway. Gideon smiled. "Then I'd say you've already started." They spent the morning working side by side, tightening posts, stacking wood, cleaning the small spring that fed the well. By noon the air had turned warm again. Mercy tied her hair back with a strip of cloth, face flushed from effort and laughter. "You know," she said, wiping her hands, "a year ago I wouldn't have believed I'd end up here, not alive, not smiling, not—" She paused, glancing at him. "Not at peace." Gideon leaned against the post, eyes soft. "You earned it. Every scar, every mile, every sunrise after the fire. Peace don't just happen. It's built, one heartbeat at a time." She looked at him for a long moment, the wind catching her breath. "You talk like a man who's found it too." He chuckled. "Not yet, but standing next to you feels like I'm close." As the sun reached its peak, Mercy walked out to the small patch of land behind the cabin. She knelt and began to plant seeds, corn, wildflowers, whatever she'd managed to trade from a passing merchant weeks before. Her hands dug into the damp soil, fingers trembling slightly, but not from fear. Gideon came up behind her. "Planting a garden?" She looked up, smiling faintly. "Planting proof." "Of what?" "That something good can still grow out of what tried to destroy me." He crouched beside her, helping her press seeds into the dirt. "Then this will be the finest proof in all the West." Later, as twilight bled across the horizon, they sat on the porch, boots dusty, shoulders touching. The sky burned with color, rose, amber, violet, the whole world holding its breath between day and night. Mercy broke the quiet. "You think the stories ever stop?" He shook his head. "Not the good ones. They just change shape." She rested her head on his shoulder. "Then maybe ours is just beginning." He looked at her, eyes catching the last light of the sun. "I reckon so." The wind moved through the grass, soft as a whisper. Somewhere far off, thunder rumbled faintly. but it sounded more like a heartbeat than a threat. Mercy closed her eyes. For the first time, the sound didn't scare her. When the stars rose, she spoke again. Quiet, certain. If this story has touched a tender place in your heart, let your light stay with us. Comment, share, and subscribe, so this Western fire keeps burning for you. Out here, every story leaves a trail, and this one will ride with you wherever the wind goes.